Hi there, I have a question for you. What difference can one person make? Is there a more fundamental question for us as Americans than to consider what we as an individual, what one person can make? What kind of difference can we make? It's often thought about in terms of election cycles in politics, isn't it? Where, the majority rules, and if you don't have the numbers, you're not going to win, and so on. And I understand that, but consider this, especially as you consider looking into a minority party. What difference can one person make? Well, can you imagine when we had the tie-breaking votes, the big votes in Michigan, where Medicaid expansion was being considered, or the road tax was being considered, and in those cases they had the lieutenant governor had to weigh in, or they had to pressure somebody to vote, and so on, and it was pretty ugly. What difference could a one person have made during those votes? I guess the next question would be is what would you like that person to be like? In politics, you often have heard, I'm sure, that what happened to those people? They were such good people. Then they went to Lansing or they went to Washington and then they changed. Well, I maintain they didn't change. They really weren't that person before that you thought they were before they went to office. So where do we go for instruction? We go to the Bible, right? Exodus 18:21 says to elect people that are have four different criteria. One first criteria is that they're able-bodied, physically able, mentally able, able to serve. The second criteria would be that they're God-fearing. I would have to say this is the most important of the four. If you think about it, if they're God-fearing, they aren't going to be more afraid of the party leadership or the lobbyists, the different people that put pressure on them, and in truth, even their constituents. Because ultimately, they take an oath to protect and defend the Constitution. And if the constituents want them to do something unconstitutional, then they need to obey their oath. And they would do so if they're God fearing, right? The third thing is that they're truth seeking. And if you think of it in terms of today's culture is riddled full of emotion and not truth seeking. And to have a person that comes in with the intellectual discipline to seek the facts, that'd be pretty important. And the last thing is that they would hate a moral gain. So you think of that in terms of the lobbyists that come in and seek to distort how that person behaves, acts, votes, you name it. And so they'd have to hate that. So just I consider you to think outside the box. We need to change up what we've been doing. We've had incrementalism away from Americanism for years, and it's time to look at it differently. So um, think about being a radical and going for the minority and seeing the power of the one person, what that can happen. Thank you, and God to help us restore America.